All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the first unofficial episode of the Leader's Edge podcast.
I did not know it was on the Leader's Edge.
I didn't even know.
In
this episode, I'm going to be interviewing my wife, Donna Gift Warder, to get her real, raw, transparent opinion on me as a man and the journey of our relationship as a result. My intention here is to gain a deeper understanding from her perspective of how we got here, all the things I did wrong along the way, and ultimately what I did right for her to stick around with me through the entire year of healing and growth, and the first year that we were together. And then right when we thought we were in the clear, a $500,000 investment that went south and completely failed, that led to our hot water and electric being turned off, having to drive to the gym so that she could take a hot shower while I took Zoom calls with investors from the car, and ultimately her selling her house to keep us afloat, and really everything that we've been through in between that and since then. Donna Gift Warder, do you solemnly swear that the testimony that you are about to give is the whole truth, nothing but the truth, without any sugarcoating to make me look good, so help you God?
So help me God. Yes, I agree.
You do solemnly swear?
I solemnly swear.
And I swear I won't edit anything out that she says besides dead space and filler words like ums.
Yeah. I have not seen or heard any of these questions he's about to ask me, so you will have the honest truth, because I literally don't know anything else. So
Yep, it's going to all be a surprise. All right, so we're going to dive straight in. What do women really want? It's okay. And what by women, I mean like relatively healed women.
Okay. In a man?
Yes.
What do women want? So.
And in a relationship. So you can speak generally.
Okay. For the most part, women would love to have a man who takes initiative, is a pursuer, a provider, someone who knows how to be soft yet firm when he's not talking about the bed. I'm talking about
60 seconds.
I'm talking about emotionally intelligent yet knows how to put his foot down and is not, for lack of better terms, a pussy. Can I say that?
You did.
Okay, sorry.
So.
Not weak. We don't want a weak man. We want someone who can take initiative. We also want a man who can, when we look at a man we're getting ready to marry, we will also, for the most part, if we want children, want to know that our children are in capable hands and will be led properly as well. So someone who knows how to communicate his feelings, what's going on, who's not afraid of his own truth. Sex does matter.
How are we doing in that department?
We were making a joke about this in the car. I was like, what questions are you going to ask me? Am I good in bed? But yeah, I would say that's pretty all-encompassing. But overall, women, we just want to feel safe, knowing that we can trust you with our emotions, that you can hold firm when we ourselves are rocky, who can communicate with us, who can lead us not into turmoil and destruction, but to better tomorrows, to a better future. Because, I mean, we women, I love us, but we can be emotional. We have a lot of hormones pumping through our bodies, especially that time of the month. And a lot of the time, we need a very grounded man who can help keep us also grounded.
Great answer. Okay. It's funny, I was just writing an email the other day.
You got to put your mic up. Sorry.
He's running this podcast, y'all, not me.
Yeah.
I was just writing an email the other day about really drawing the parallel between how women pay attention to how you treat the dog, and then if you treat them poorly, they'll draw a parallel to you treating their children poorly and worry about how you'll show up as a father.
That is actually very true, because there have been times, like even to how you treat people out in public, waiters, workers, how you treat us, we draw parallels to how you would treat our future children.
Yeah. All right, second question. Looking back at when we first started dating, what was some of your first impressions of me? What were some green flags and what were some red flags?
Red flags.
You going for red flags first?
All
right,
red flags.
Well, yeah.
We got to knock them out first. Red flags, aesthetically, you had long hair. That was really confusing to me. I honestly thought that I thought your goals in life, which is also, I wasn't sure if I was taking our date very seriously. I honestly just thought, for the worst that could happen is, we become really good friends. And yeah, you have really long hair. So I really thought that your life goal was to live in a van on a beach. And then when you told me all your dreams, I was like, I'm surprised. So your looks did not match your internal posture, but it was more like a yellow flag, I would say. Other red flags. Oh, another red flag. We didn't really go out on a date our first time. You came over, which that kind of to me felt, I honestly was surprised that I even continued through with it, in my honest opinion, because I even tried to cancel our date because I'm like, I don't want you to come over. I deserve a date. And that was how I felt about it. But then because the fact that I was anticipating us to just be friends anyways, I was like, the worst that will happen. So I was like, it's fine because it's not really a date.
We also were we were in the same friend group, so I was even approaching it as I wasn't sure either.
Oh, okay.
Which is part of why.
Still rude. Still
Hey,
took on a date.
Man, I don't recommend it. Okay,
Yeah,
I got
it doesn't
lucky.
work in every case.
It still worked out, but I would not recommend it. And normally I didn't approach it that way. But
yeah.
I had been on a lot of dates in the last 2 months leading up to that. And
okay, so
anyways,
I'm
all right, so red flags and green flags.
Yes, okay. Red flag. It would have been a red flag had I known you didn't have a car. I didn't find out until about second date. And I was like, what do you mean you borrowed a car for our date? There was a couple of red flags, okay? But your personality, again, didn't match your situation and like the outward appearance. And so I, luckily for me, dug deeper. And this is just part of my character. I wouldn't say every woman is like this. I dig more into character and how you present yourself internally versus the external. So again, not suggested for most men out there, because there are a lot of women who the minute they saw everything that I saw that was a red flag, they would have dipped the other way. Green flags, very much your internal posture. The way you communicated was very open and honest. And honestly, like the stories you told, I thought were a red flag, but they're actually true. I thought he was lying about his story about the whole SWAT thing. And like all the stories of, he went to San Cugat and did all, I know his stories, but I didn't know how real they were. And it literally took me 1.5 years till I went to New Orleans with you and actually met your other cop guys. I was like, oh shit, he actually was like a badass. I was like,
all the stories are real. Wow.
Yeah, part of me was like, he was just like a cop eating donuts and he saw a lot of movies. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. But yeah, there was a part of me that questioned it. But green flag, because your communication was top notch, if I do say so myself, and you were very emotionally intelligent. I could tell by the way you communicated and what you shared. It wasn't superficial conversation. It was deep. We talked about beliefs. We talked about vision. We talked about things that actually mattered to me, so I could paint the picture of whether or not we had a future together. So that was extremely green flag. And a very green flag is that our ideas of a future were in alignment. So yeah, that was good. Red flag, you didn't like my ravioli.
Hardcore judger for that one.
That's my red flag, I guess. I had ravioli like at midnight on our first date. I was really hungry. We had spent 6 hours talking straight. And I was like, the quickest thing I can eat right now is my ravioli, and it is my guilty pleasure. So I ate that, and before I took my first bite, you went in for a kiss?
Yeah, as she like stabbed the first ravioli and was headed towards her mouth, I grabbed her wrist and turned her chin towards me and said, "Before you ruin your breath." And then I could... Yeah,
I'd say that those were some of the red and green flags.
Just
on the first date, right? Is that what you're asking?
I'd say even in the first few dates, because I think the thing that I want to bring to the surface, even if it makes me look bad, is like what, and also good, is like what things stood out to you, both good and bad, so that men that are watching this can understand, some of the things that maybe could have ruined it, and also the things that stood out that were like, okay, I'm gonna go on another date, and I'm gonna continue to explore this with him because of these things.
Got it. Okay. So another green flag I would say was that the second date when you decided to take me to the top of the mountain,
The painting with a
the
twist.
painting with a twist. The uniqueness of it, actually, it was more the effort of it was really what stood out to me, because it wasn't just, you found some paint and you like literally bought an easel, the paint, you set up the table, you had wine and cheese, and it was an entire experience. And so to me, it's not so much the expenses, but the effort. The effort matters 100%. At least for me. There's women who absolutely only care about the expenses, and they'll look at the dollar amount and be like, you didn't spend enough. But again, I'm just not one of those women. I care more about personality and our connection. So that was a green flag for me.
Can I add something to this?
Yeah,
So I had borrowed a friend's truck even for that date too.
I remember.
So I
That's when I found out you didn't have a car.
Yeah.
I don't know how you hid
So
it from me.
hiding it.
Yeah,
but-
I just didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had taken my assistant's car, Chevy Spark,
Yeah.
to it was like it looks like a
It was
punch
like a
bug,
tiny little.
to our first date, and I parked it around the corner, and I did hide that.
You did hide it.
I
the
did
first
hide
time.
that 100%.
Red flag.
But I'm also hiding what I was driving, not that I didn't have my own car. Because
both.
I didn't care about that, because that
Yeah.
was a financial decision that I thought was smart. And I walked everywhere. I was in downtown Scottsdale.
Yeah.
And I was single for a long time, not dating, so I didn't need one.
Yeah, and
It's
you were like
a
in
$900
Mexico for
payment.
a minute.
Yeah, I was spending a lot of time in Mexico. But yeah, it was funny because then I also had to basically borrow a friend's car
For that
truck
date,
to
yeah.
take you on that date as well.
Yeah, I remember.
What was the? You had one more?
One more green flag, and this one's a big one. I don't know if this is news for anybody, but Dylan and I actually did sleep together the first night. Typically, I don't do that, but we had a really strong connection that night. Everything was just, the conversation flowed so easily, and one thing led to another, and we slept together. Now, I was pretty hard on myself, but the next time you came over and it started to lead up to that, I remember crying right before we were going to do the deed, and you're like, I'm sure, and I'm curious what you were thinking, but I shortly after explained to you what was going on in my mind, that I was having a lot of regret and remorse for sleeping with you, and that I actually wanted to revoke the rite of passage. And I remember you pausing for a moment, and you were like, okay, I respect it. And I was like, really? I assume that you would have told me you respected it, at least in the first time, but I don't know if you're going to disappear
Yeah,
after that.
even if I said I respect it,
Right.
like most men later on would be like, all right, like I'm out.
Yeah, or they would try again and see if they could push a boundary, but you were so respectful. We just cuddled. You spent the night, but we just cuddled, and we didn't sleep together for, almost a month?
More than that.
More than that.
Yeah.
And that to me was an extreme green flag, because you were also in agreement with me that sex could absolutely skew the way that we connect with one
Perceive the
another.
connection.
Yeah, it could dilute the connection that we have. It could make us fall in love before we actually fell in love with each other.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a really big green flag for me.
I actually think that in a way, you doing that saved the relationship from my perspective too, as far as my respect for you. Because I wouldn't have probably offered the same amount of respect or had the same amount of respect for you. But that was an act of self-respect that you had, that us sleeping together the first night, I would have probably seen you differently because of that, and potentially not seen a long-term relationship because of that. But I also agree on the connection and everything. It wasn't a normal night and a normal date, and everything's circumstantial. But keep going, sorry.
Yeah. So that was it. That was
Okay.
a green flag. Yeah.
Beautiful. Okay. You came into this relationship deep in your masculine, hyper-independent, hypercritical, often, sometimes even really harsh with me. What was really going on underneath all of that?
It wasn't you, obviously. We had just started dating, so you couldn't have been the cause of my defensiveness and masculinity. It was really a combination of a few things. Growing up by myself, my parents left back to the Philippines the minute I hit 18. Like, they basically told me before my birthday that they were going back to the Philippines and that I was going to have to figure it out. We're Filipino, so growing up where I was from, there really wasn't other Filipinos, and my parents had extreme trust issues, which also transferred into me because of the way they behaved. I followed in their footsteps. So I couldn't even sleep over at a friend's house. My parents just didn't trust anyone, and they always told me, you can't trust anyone. So that was a belief that was engraved in me. And yeah, so I grew up very isolated. I had to figure things out on my own, by myself. I had been in relationships that were abusive, verbally, some physically. Not that I got beat, but one of my exes did pull a gun out on me. There was just a lot of, and also the only man figure I had to bounce ideas off of was a cheater. My dad cheated on my mom basically all the way until his 50s or 60s. I don't even know if he's still doing it. I love the dude, but that's what I saw. That's all I knew about men. So in my mind, men couldn't be trusted, and the only person that could be trusted is myself. And so I just grew up very guarded, shielded, defensive, and the only way I got anything done was by showing up for myself and by brute force. That's what I learned.
It's interesting because to you, there's a cultural aspect to that, right? Mm-hmm. Filipino. And it's not a story, it's your story. Mm-hmm. But there's so many women who also are showing up in a relationship just like that. And so I think that the lack of ability to trust a man, period, and then the repetitive experience, not even with your father, but then all these other relationships, has a compound effect.
Yeah, and I mentioned the Filipino part of my story is mostly just because I didn't see anybody who was like me. So it was a feeling of not being included and didn't know where I fit in.
So another layer of loneliness almost.
Yeah, it was on top of it. It wasn't the only thing that separated me, but I did feel very different. And not only that, where I grew up, mine were very small. And so for me to have such big dreams most people just wanted to be like the best gangster. And so it was just different, it didn't feel like I fit in. So it led to more feelings of isolation.
Yeah, okay. What were some of the challenges we faced early on in our relationship that you didn't expect to encounter?
The big one, we'll just shoot the big one, because I think it's actually there's many, but the biggest one for sure, was my own trust issues. And I recognized that I had trust issues, but it was such a small whisper in my ear. I didn't fully comprehend it. I wasn't conscious enough to truly recognize what it was. And it showed up like a surprise because I started falling in love with you. And so when I fell in love with you, the defensiveness, the trust issues, the feeling, I literally felt like when you would go out with the guys, I thought you would choose anybody over me. There was no trust that you would be with me. That was my own insecurities, but also just from what I've seen, just men cheat. And I wanted a loyal partner, yet didn't know what that even looked like. And so my trust issues came out so bad. And it felt like a shock to me because I'd not seen it from the light that it truly was. And it wasn't until I took a step back and realized, oh my God, I am the problem. And it makes sense. All of those times I acted crazy whenever, and I had to pause for a second and reflect on all of my past relationships and how crazy I acted during certain moments. I'm like, wow. I remember jumping on one of my ex's backs because we got into some fight, but it was over him having one of his girlfriends, like his friends, over. We all had the kickback, and I got jealous or something because she said something that to me felt like it was flirting. It was totally not flirting. It was just crazy. So yeah, just moments like I had to reflect and really be honest with myself, and I realized that I was absolutely the problem. So that was a big thing, because when I fell in love with you, all of the dirt started to come out because I wanted to protect what I had.
It was more attachment. So
it
more
was,
emotional
yeah.
Reaction to it.
Absolutely. So that was the biggest hurdle, and that took months to overcome.
Yeah, almost a year.
I'd
probably.
say almost a year.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I remember part of what helped me heal that was actually the biggest part of that was the fact that you never left, that you continued to stay, and not just stay because you were dealing with it, you continued to work through it with me. So whenever I was having moments, you, at least not in the beginning, it was rough because you were learning how to deal with a woman who had trust issues like I did. Like, you would get frustrated and say, I don't understand why you don't trust me. And it would be this back and forth. But I remember there was a moment where I told you I was working through this, and I was very honest. I'm like, I realize that I'm the problem. I realize that this is an issue and that I could lose you if I choose not to grow from this, but I'm gonna need your help. And I think when I asked for it, you were so accommodating and so open about it. And you were just like, yeah, babe, I'm willing to help you. And from then on, I mean, it wasn't always perfect, but for the most part, whenever I had these episodes, you were very kind to me, and you just reassured me instead of punishing me for having this experience or feeling this way. You would just remind me how much you loved me. And the definitive moment was one night when you actually sat down with me, and you came home after being out with the guys. You pulled the little bohemian chair that we had and you set it in the middle, and I sat down, and you had me sit down right in front. I think it was the bean bag, and I was looking up at you. I remember the imagery pretty vividly. And you broke down every reason why you loved me. You're like, I don't understand. And you went in on detail about all the little things you love about me, all the reasons why you love me, and the reasons why you would never ruin our trust. And you also reminded me about who you are with your integrity, your loyalty. And something finally clicked. I'm like, I really need to get this together or I will lose this wonderful man. I remember that.
I appreciate you sharing that. I think you're answering a bunch of questions in one.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's why I was about to say something. I'm like, I'll just let her. It's coming out authentically. Here we are. Okay, so there's probably gonna be some questions where you like slightly answer them, but it'll give an opportunity to go a little bit deeper.
Okay.
I love you.
I love you so much. I do.
All right, so we both adopted the belief that whatever challenges we faced as individuals within our relationship, we can either overcome them in this relationship or be forced to do it in the next one. How do you think that belief impacted the way we handled our struggles, both together and individually?
I think it...
And Ken, you could just share your perspective on this.
For me, it created a container where there was no wishy-washiness of the decision. It was, we agree that we are in this together, and we both know that we're going to give this our all before we call it quits. And that decision, and not entertaining any other options except for growth, knowing that we were going to have to deal with it again and again, was honestly the security that I needed to continue in the relationship as well. And it changes something about the way you manage the relationship, because it stops blaming everything else outside of you and instead forces you to take accountability for yourself, because we agree that it's usually not the other person, that there's always something that we can fix. So it's the personal responsibility that you and I took upon ourselves that, to me, solidified the decision to be in this relationship till we can't fight anymore.
Yeah, they're all getting wrapped into each other. It's great. This is really
it's a good flowing conversation.
Right. So in the beginning, when I learned about the men you had dated previous to me, who were making 7-8 figures, and some of them in way better shape than I was, it triggered some insecurities in me that caused some conflict that I had to face. When I was finally honest with you that I was confronting those insecurities, how did you see that? Did you see that as weak? Or how did you perceive me in that truth?
So weak. I'm just kidding. I'm kidding. No, it was honestly...
You have to be honest. You have to be really honest.
Okay. It was very... Honestly, I saw it as a strength. I saw it as your willingness to Well, I mean, you hired a coach after dating. I think we were only dating a couple months.
3 months, yeah.
Yeah. And at first, I didn't know that the reason why you hired a coach was for our relationship. I thought it was for your business. I thought you were just ready to hit the next level. But then when I jumped on the call with that same coach, because I used him for a couple sessions, I realized that it was for us, that you were working through some of those insecurities. And I honestly saw it as such a beautiful thing. Like, how cool is it that the man that we just started dating is willing to hire a coach to work through his own insecurities, not blaming me for my past, not looking at that and saying, oh, well, why do you do that? And, just questioning that, but instead you took full responsibility and took action to better yourself. So I saw that as, I was just in shock, honestly, because I've never had a man take that initiative. In fact, my ex-husband would, when I mentioned even therapy, he was like, I don't, therapy's for the weak and blah, blah, blah. And it was this belief that I also had as well. I mean, not really. In my mind, I'm like, there's no weakness in exposing truth and working through it. But he felt that way, and most men do. And I just think, I thought it was powerful. I thought it was, what's the word? Endearing. And to me, it showed how much you actually cared about yourself, which is one of the most important things, and us and this relationship. And it truly showed the action attached to the belief that we had both discussed about, if we don't deal with this in this relationship, we're going to deal with it in the next.
I appreciate that. I think I had realized that at a certain point, I'm like, okay, I'm a coach. I've been coaching for years. I've been trying to coach myself through this, and I'm still getting triggered with these things. My ego is still getting triggered. I'm still judging you on things I shouldn't be judging you on. All sorts of stuff, even getting mad about the Aruba hoodie that you had, that some dude bought her, that like when she wore them, because I was assigned meaning to it.
Yeah.
That because I'm a very sentimental person and things do have meaning to me, that it means the same thing for you, that you're like holding on to this relationship or whatever the case is.
Yeah.
And so.
And I'm not I don't.
You're
really
becoming one now.
I am becoming
right?
one because I'm.
Yeah. But it just, I think that. And really, those insecurities were like, it's like, okay, dude, like, you need to go make more money and work out harder and eat cleaner. Shut up. Like,
it's not the solution.
Outwork the insecurities. That's the way I saw it. But at the same time,
that's the way most men see it.
Yeah. Well, I don't think so. I think a lot of men don't even have the awareness or are solution oriented in that, because I do think that for me, I had done a lot of the work. And that was, if you want to get over this, you're going to have to just go make more money and get in better shape, dude, so you feel better about your own body.
I think that's healthy too, though.
Yeah, for sure. But I think that a big part of that, and the reason why I chose to ask this question, is because I think that a lot of men are afraid to be vulnerable, right? Especially with a woman that's in her masculine, that may be harsh and hypercritical and judgmental and may use it as ammunition or to emasculate him or any of those things. And so I think that a lot of men that might hear this, oh, that's nice, I'm great, I'm glad that you had a woman that actually handled it well, but mine wouldn't, or my ex wouldn't. Now, my response to that is, that's where it's so important to have your own confidence and self-worth and detachment, because I have to be honest with you, and if you walk away because of my truth, then this literally cannot work out, because then I'm essentially living a lie or manipulating the truth to keep you, because I'm attached to your honest response to my truth.
100%.
Do you have anything to add to that, either to the men that are listening now or to the women that probably have been in that situation before and not reacted the way you did, and now those men don't actually open up to them because of it? And that's a huge loaded question. There's so much there. Just say whatever you want.
So, first of all, I 100% agree with you that the only way you are going to know how she is going to respond is by living out your truth and speaking it and being firm in what is actually going on. Regardless of how she reacts, you don't do that for her. You do that for you. So you really do have to practice detachment when it comes to this, because truly, if she is turned away from it, uses it as ammo, or whatever negative way she wants to spin it, then it might not be your person. Or she needs to develop how to communicate better that information. Because sometimes a woman absolutely can use it as ammo, unknowingly so. Like, she'll do this without awareness around doing it. Yeah. And then that's where the back and forth communication needs to happen, and gentle corrections, and just being honest. Like, what you said actually hurt my feelings. What you said is fighting dirty. That doesn't feel good. I need you to communicate this differently. And for the most part, women can receive that if she's not in a heightened state. If she is in a heightened state, I will say it is very difficult to have conversation with her if her emotions are all over the place to start. So that's one thing, especially with women. If we're heightened, I mean, even with men, I think doesn't matter about the gender. When you're heightened, it is very difficult to receive feedback at that moment in time. So sometimes you just got to let them run it through, as long as they're not consistently taking jabs, and then come back to the conversation later on. For women who receive information from their man that is very true and honest, this is tough, because when we hear it's hard, because if we hear something that impacts our livelihood and how we're going to be, is that part of another?
No, this is just, I probably should have added more. I got it.
You're like, oh.
Yeah. I should have added more on this, because this is a big topic. So
Yeah.
I was just agreeing.
Got it.
No, keep going.
Okay. Yeah. What was it on?
Their livelihood. So if they're always talking and complaining being
Yes.
honest in a way that makes them seem weak.
Yes.
Yeah.
Then, if a man is sharing something that is going to impact a woman's livelihood, it is going to be very difficult for her to distinguish the difference of where she can hold space for you versus trying to correct you in some sense to get you to fix it.
Or just be
Right.
triggered emotionally, because now this, like, his perceived weakness is now a threat to her
Right.
livelihood.
Right. If it is something in that nature, this is where I do suggest reaching out to men that you trust and having conversations with other men who can have that discussion with you. That way you're still getting the advice and guidance and space that you need to share that truth, while still maintaining the masculinity, the leadership, the stoicism that is necessary in the relationship. As much as I would love to say that all women are going to be like, oh, well, it's okay, baby. It's not the truth, right? I would love to think that's the truth. And there are times where Dylan has come to me and has been honest with me about certain situations, but it took me a whole level of maturity to be able to receive that and not feel threatened by it personally. And that's not every woman has that. And this isn't
Well, you didn't have it in the beginning. So
I didn't.
So it's not like a high horse thing.
I'm speaking what happened for me. And so now I feel like I can manage it a lot better. Whereas before, you told me something about our finances, I'm like, oh crap. Like, we're not going to survive. The house is going under. The snakes are falling from the sky. I don't know. Random things. But yeah, I did not manage it well before. And so, again, very suggested that you have men that you can talk to. And if you don't have a male group that you trust in that sense, find a new friend group or hire a coach. You gotta have a space to actually speak that, because if you keep pushing it under the rug, it's gonna fester in maybe not even a blowout, but it'll show up in self-destruction. It'll show up in not taking care of your body. You'll start to have like shorter fuses with your loved ones. It can manifest in so many different ways, and it's usually not a good one. Hire a coach, get a new friend group.
So I think that's really two different conversations, right? Because there's the being open and vulnerable with your partner about something that you're battling with or going through, and feeling safe to do so without her then using it against you in your next argument or difficult conversation, right? And then there's like the daily or regular communication, and I think that's more so what you're discussing, because there was a time, which is funny because I think a lot of women are like, oh, well, I want a man that like is, emotionally tapped in and communicates and all these things. It's like, yes, but you don't want a man that's emotional. You want a man that's emotionally intelligent, can communicate his emotions. You don't want him always communicating his emotions.
No.
And so there was a time when you were battling with those insecurities and trust issues where you'd be like, hey, how was your day? And I'm like, it was good. And I'm like, that's it. And then you'd ask me questions and dig to get more information. And eventually I would share more, and I'd share more because you're asking and asking. And I'm like, I don't care to share all these things with you. But it was, in ways, it was to feel a little bit more secure about what my day was like. And then you like, and women, a lot of women do this where it's, well, what are you thinking? Like randomly throughout the day, like what's going on in your head?
Yeah.
And it's just like, just to make sure that we're okay.
Yeah.
But that built a habit in me to just share everything with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so that I unknowingly started just sharing my entire day with you. And in the details of that day would be things that I wouldn't normally discuss with you. I would just keep to myself because I'm going to solve it on my own. But I was sharing them, and then that was creating more stress in you because you were hyper aware of the roller coaster that I was on as a man, working to protect and provide.
Yeah.
And so I think that's the difference, and that's where men having other men they can confide in and vent to, or just in general building the habit of taking the time to process on your own, journal, do whatever. There's so many different ways you can handle it besides just dumping it on your girlfriend or your fiance or your wife. With that, because we're now only on like question 7 of 20.
Oh, wow.
So
I don't even know how long we've been going for.
Probably about 45 minutes.
Okay.
So a few months in, you were finding yourself, and you've alluded to this a little bit, but a few months in, you were finding yourself in a victim mindset often and pointing the finger towards me. But at a certain point, you said you realized that if you didn't start taking responsibility for your own actions, reactions, and healing, you were going to lose me. I think a lot of men are afraid to set boundaries and or don't know how to set boundaries in a healthy way. Can you speak to what me setting boundaries and being firm on those boundaries did for you as a woman in a relationship with me?
So when we were in the midst of a heated argument, when you would say things like, this is pushing me away, that didn't do it for me. To me, I was like, oh, well, good for you because you're going to be losing an amazing girl. The combative nature of me was to respond in that way. So that didn't do it for me. It was when you intentionally set a container for us to have a conversation. Well, both of us did. We both would decide, okay, that we need to have a conversation this day, and we're going to sit down and give ourselves some open space to talk about this honestly and share what has been working and what hasn't been working. And I really enjoy those conversations because it helps us keep in touch with each other and really it gives us the grounds for honesty in such a busy world. It shows the intention of the relationship. And so I remember having a conversation where you really were firm on how you felt about it all. And you were saying, like, I remember you said, I love you so much, but when you react in this way, it makes me feel like I will never be able to have a life outside of our relationship. It makes me feel like I don't have freedom in my life. I feel great in every other aspect, yet restricted in this. And you were just honest. You let me know that's not the way to live. That's not a healthy relationship. We can't just expect to just be each other's worlds with no friends, no outside world. That's not reality. And so you were very honest with me about how much it was pushing you away. And I don't think I fully understood it until we had that conversation. And I realized, I'm like, wow, I didn't realize how much it was impacting you.
So what you're referring to is the insecurities and me feeling like I can't go do things with my friends without you or things of that nature. I think the other thing that was coming up in a lot of our difficult conversations was what I perceived to be disrespectful. And so I was trying to create boundaries around communication to be able to be respectful even when we're emotionally charged. And that was something at first, like that was normal for you in past relationships and it wasn't normal for me. And so that was something that I was trying to set boundaries on and be like, and I think sometimes I didn't do a good job. I'm like, I'm not going to tolerate this. Don't talk to me like that.
Yeah.
But there was other times where I'm like, hey, listen, when you talk to me this way, this is how it feels, and I can't accept this. This isn't something that I would accept for the rest of my life, and it would need to change. So we need to make progress in this.
Yeah.
And so again, and I don't really know, maybe I don't have a perfectly formed question in this, but I think that I did something right when it came to setting boundaries that made you give me a level of respect that then eventually was like, hey, if I don't start doing this, I'm going to lose him. And so I think inherently there was some respect there, as well as attachment and other things. But again, I think that there's a lot of men that really struggle with that. And just from your perspective, say there is something that that a man needs to communicate with his partner to set a boundary, and he's firm on it or wants to be firm on it because he's afraid of her reaction to it. What would be your advice for him, and maybe give some understanding to what that actually does when it comes to respect, instead of if he doesn't set those boundaries and just gets walked all over?
Yeah. So for clarity purposes, the disrespect he's talking about is the language we use when we would argue. I would call him, forgive me for cussing, but I would say things like, you piece of shit. I remember calling you that. Oof, yeah, even that doesn't feel good. I hate saying that. I'm sorry I said that. Clearly, we got a ring, ladies and gents. Okay, anyways, get distracted by shiny things. Okay, so yeah, I would call him names during our arguments, and essentially I would fight dirty. I mean, I don't think I used a lot of our past arguments as ammo, but I did name call, and that was dirty. And so I can't remember if you set a container for that as well, but I think it just happened when we cooled down, when we stopped being so heightened in our emotions and we were talking it out. You mentioned to me and said that me continuing to say that is completely disrespectful, and that you were just really firm and honest. You said you will not tolerate it. It's not the way we speak to each other. And that was it, like point blank, period. You didn't try to explain why it hurt your feelings. You didn't try to point the finger back and say, well, I don't do this to you, so you shouldn't do it to me. You just said, this is a boundary that I absolutely will not continue to tolerate. I love you, but this has to change. And that firmness was attractive. It was, I'm aware that I can be a little brat sometimes. I'm fully aware. I mean, I'm a little spicy. I got character. That's what I call it, character.
That makes me feel better about it.
Yeah. So it's nice to be told no once in a while. Like, I shouldn't be getting my way all the time. That's actually very unhealthy. If you let me do whatever I want, whenever I want it, all the time, that means you don't love me. That to me doesn't show love, because all love requires gentle correction. All love requires some correction, because what's the point of being in a relationship if you just let me do whatever I want? Then I have nothing to bounce off of. I have nothing to mirror my own issues that I'm blind to. So it's useful to have a partner who's willing to set the boundaries and say, this is incorrect. Your behavior is unacceptable, and we can't continue on if you speak to me like this. That was love to me. And the way you said it was in such a loving tone. It wasn't to punish me. It wasn't to shake your finger at me and say, you should never
feel any worse about it. Yeah,
you didn't dig into it. You just said, for you, that's a no-go. We cannot continue to cross that. And I accepted that. And I thought that was, to me, that showed how much you actually loved me, and again, loved yourself enough to set that boundary.
That's a great point. I'm gonna see if there's anything to add to this. Again, you've answered some other questions, but at a certain point, out of frustration with you and with myself, I adopted this belief that although your healing wasn't my responsibility, that didn't mean that I couldn't take responsibility for becoming a safe space for your healing. I know that's really catchy, but for men who are listening, can you explain how my behavior changed and what that did for you? And I know you already added this, but is there anything specific that now, like today, with how safe you feel with me, that really stands out, that if a man could master, a woman would be would feel a lot more safe with him emotionally? Any specifics?
I mean, I think just hearing the amount of responsibility you were willing to take for this relationship showed to me again that you are my person. I mean, you're somebody that is worth fighting for. And there has to be a level of awareness on my end to know that the healing journey truly is not your responsibility. My healing journey is not your responsibility. And so knowing that you are going to stand firm and be my safe place while I work this out brought me a level of comfort that it's really hard to explain. It's like knowing that I'm going to continue having a house even if I destroy the inside a little bit, right? I still have a roof over my head. I'm not going to be out in the cold, but I might mess up the house a little bit, and that's okay.
It's not a stress to not be perfect.
Yes.
Because that was the standard I feel like I set was we do not have to be perfect, but there absolutely has to be progress.
Yeah. And that's a beautiful part, or that has been a beautiful aspect of our relationship, is both of us agreed that relationships are messy and that humans are messy, and that's okay.
Yeah. I love it. What do you do? All right. In January 2023, when I shut down coaching and that investment failed, what was going through your head when we hit that level of hardship?
Fuck. Sorry again. Gosh. You know what? My first thought was, I told you. But I never said that out loud. It was a thought that was in my mind because I remember before you made that investment, I was like, there's something doesn't feel good. But I didn't speak up about it, and that's also my thing is, I also don't think we were in a space where you had my respect in that, in trusting my intuition, because it was not just you, it was you and your business partners.
Yeah.
So there's a difference there. But typically, I would want to have expressed that, but I just kept my mouth shut. And then when it all fell through, that was my first thought. But I would never, and still to this day, agree with how I handled it. I would have never tried to kick you while you were down. So even though that was my first thought, I would never say it out loud. The next thought was honestly just chaos. I didn't know what to think. Can
I add a little bit to like refine the answer a little bit?
Yeah.
What about that season, or what did that season teach you about me as a man? What did you learn about me during that season?
I learned a lot about your drive and seeing that no matter what, that you were not just going to keel over and die. You weren't going to give up. And it showed me your grit. It showed me your heart. It showed me, because I mean, even in those darker times, you still found a way to manage dates. I mean, I remember we did dates where we would pull the little sheets or whatever out into the patio, and that was our date night.
A movie and some stars.
Yeah. You got creative with the dates.
The dance party.
Yeah. And honestly, it just showed me that, it doesn't always have to be perfect in the outside world, but the fact that our connection is still good and you're still willing to put in the effort to show up and like doing things that you hated, like driving Uber, like that to me.
4 a.m. to 4 p.m. and serving.
Yeah, honestly, it wasn't until you did that action that I started to see that you were willing to do more than what it takes. Because I think there was a time period where you were still like figuring out whether or not you were going to start taking action in other spaces, and that to me bred a lot of frustrations and insecurities in myself and in us and you, honestly, during that time, because you weren't that quick to take action right away. But then when you started to, and you stuck with it, even though I was making more money than you doing caddying gigs in a few hours than you were driving, I was like, the fact that he's not letting his ego get to him and instead is just accepting it for what it is, but still continuing to show up, that shows a lot of character and growth in what he's willing to do to make this work. And yeah, I learned a lot about you during that time. I learned that you can stay grounded during chaotic times. I learned that we really We learned a lot on how to communicate better with each other.
Yeah.
So that's all we could do. Yeah, so many beautiful lessons, although they were hard lessons, were learned during that time period.
What was one thing that you learned about yourself during that time period?
It's hard to summarize it or to choose one over any and all of the lessons that I learned. But I mean, I think one of the big things I realized is, wow, I actually love you more than I put off. I was willing to sell my house, willing to give up a lot of things. God, I sold everything in the house too to make this work. And I don't think I put as much weight on how much I truly loved you until I was in it. And I'm like, oh crap, like I really just moved with quickness with all of this.
Which I could see, it was like you were scared because what if this doesn't work out and I do all this?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, I was absolutely terrified. I'm like, I'm doing all of this. I don't even know if this man is going to stay with me. I have no ring on my finger. Very ballsy, lady, very ballsy. And it goes against everything that I had been taught growing up about having things for yourself. And my mom used to stash away cash on the top left of the closet in a little folder. And she would always, like, it was like a monthly life lesson she would give me. She'd show me the money and be like, always have something for yourself. And I remember hearing that in my head while I was selling all this stuff. I'm like, I'm not listening to anything I thought I should have followed. But yeah, I mean, I learned a lot of stuff during that time period.
Yeah. Do you trust me to protect and provide for you mentally and emotionally? If so, and I'm asking this question to not assume for the audience or even myself. Do you trust me to protect and provide for you mentally and emotionally? If so, when did you start trusting me to do so and why?
Mentally and emotionally, I've trusted you with that for quite some time now. I would say when you helped me when you held space for me while I worked through my trust issues and insecurities, to me, that showed that I was going to be safe with you no matter what. Because in my opinion, that was the hardest mental breakthrough that I had to overcome. And to me, that was the ugliest I've been. And so you truly have seen me work through some of the most traumatic experiences, all summarized into one big lump, couple of months, close to a year. And the fact that you endured through that, I knew that I could trust you with my mental and emotional stability, and just, I felt safe in that space. Now the financial aspect, that has been something that you and I have had a roller coaster with. And honestly, that trust didn't necessarily happen with the physical money. I mean, I started to see you make more and it gave me that security, but the true sense of security happened when I pursued God and trusted in Him to provide and not relied it all on man. And it has nothing to do with your capabilities. It has everything to do with understanding that we are limited humans. And it really taught me that truly money doesn't really matter that much. And during those times, I learned that money really doesn't matter. We went through some pretty tough times. Bills went unpaid, and nothing. We were still negative bank account. We were fine though. We were still alive. We had food on the table. We figured it out,
and we still maintained an amazing relationship.
And that was the best part.
Yeah.
And so I felt that really showed me that just because a couple bills go unpaid, the world does not fall apart. The world does not stop just because of that. And there's always a way to make money. We just hadn't tapped into it. So my belief in provider only and trust in finances was truly when I found God. Now, obviously, you started to make more money toward, some point in our relationship. Obviously, we're not going to stay down.
It was like late 2023.
Yeah. And that started to show me that, you're still enduring. I think endurance was a huge aspect of it, where I knew that you were not going to stop until you just weren't going to stop. There is no until. I know that you can stand the long game, and I've seen you show up every day and continue to get better every day. And so to me, that is proof enough to know that the money will come, and it has been, Yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think that there was my ability to make money that was even there when we first met. But then I had made decisions and continue to make some decisions that would hinder my ability to provide, let alone consistently. And then there was also just a mindset shift that had to happen for me to start to make decisions for us. I had to make decisions for my business. I wouldn't spend, again, $25 on a t-shirt, but I'd spend $25K on a coach or a mentor. And then and that's the money that would give us the security for 3-4 months. And I wasn't considering you because I wasn't there yet where I was truly preparing for marriage and building a family.
Yeah.
And that was something that really had to change and has changed significantly over the last year. That I think is where the trust when it comes to the financial side of things has come in. Because obviously, it's, yes, God, all of that.
Yeah.
But your choice to say yes to marry me, you had to trust in my ability to provide for you and a family.
Yes.
In order to go through with that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, there was definitely a switch in your demeanor when you made the decision to start making decisions for us instead of just you. Because there was absolutely no point in time in our relationship where you couldn't have made money. You started off as a coach and you could have always made money during that time. But there was a point where you were just unfulfilled in that space. You just had to step away from it for a moment. And you chose not to be in that space. Instead, you chose to drive Uber. And to me, during that time, to me, that didn't feel like an us decision. And that didn't show to me that you were willing to do whatever it took. Well, you were willing to do other things, but you didn't want to do the one thing that could actually make us a lot more money. And so to me, that was a time period where I didn't fully trust you with the finances because you were more so living for yourself and didn't prove to me that you were making decisions for us. Now, it wasn't until later on when you made that decision and when you would actually pause before you would rush into the next investment when I was like, oh, okay. Honestly, when you invested in Warrior, I thought you were going to go and try and make the next container happen. And to me, there was just a trust that needed to be built that you weren't just going to rush into the next thing. Because, I mean, you had I'm
quick to go all in on myself.
Yes. Yeah. Okay.
So just because there's a lot of discussion around this that I wasn't planning on diving into, so I want to fill in some gaps. So there was a moment where there was like that investment, it seemed like it was going to go through, and so it was a carrot on a stick.
Yeah.
And so that lasted about 2 months. Like it's about to go through. They're showing us numbers and presentations and all these things. And that was why I was waiting. But I probably waited a month to 6 weeks too long. And I had just shut down all my coaching. I had clients on annual retainers that were about to renew, and I said no to them because we believed that it was going, like that whole investment was going to turn everything around.
Yeah.
And I stopped marketing myself, everything. And I felt like I was done with coaching, or at least for a while.
Yeah.
And to a month later have to turn around and go back to marketing everything, I was literally willing to drive Uber 12 hours a day, 5 days a week, and work at a restaurant all weekend.
Yeah.
And make, throughout 1 month, probably what I could have made with one client.
Yeah.
That's how much I didn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And yeah, you're right. Part of that was absolutely selfish. But part of me felt truly incapable of returning to coaching at that point because of how much stress there was that was going on in IBIY.
Yeah.
There's a lot of that. Unless you have anything else, we'll move on.
No, I agree. But yeah, to circle back to your original question, for sure, I trust you through everything. I mean, I'm ready to do life with you.
Good.
Oh, and this was a big surprise, the engagement. I knew I was like laying it on you hard, but I was just joking. I was joking in a sense. I didn't think it was even gonna happen that year. I was just like, let's just keep planting the seed.
Yeah.
But I mean, somehow you managed to make it happen, and like during a time where we still weren't very stable in our finances, and I was like he actually cares. And so yeah, it was another like just another final nail in the coffin moment where I knew that across the board.
So let's see here. How has my discipline, integrity, and we've already talked about ability to take responsibility quite a bit. More so, maybe it's just speaking to discipline and integrity, especially with the men that I work with. It's one of the biggest things that I have to solve, and I think that a lot of them don't understand how much it's playing a role in why they're single, what their single life is like, and then the challenges that they have in their relationships once they're in them. Can you speak to how my discipline, consistency, just integrity overall has played a role in where we're at now in our relationship?
Oh man, it is truly everything. It truly is everything. It is one of the key characteristic traits that I love about you and has made me fall in love with you is your integrity and discipline, because it shows to me that you care about yourself, that you care about the relationships you hold, not just me. You held that same standard with your friends, your family. You continued to pour into just your friends for free, just because you have such a good heart. But the discipline, it just showed to me that you were willing to put in the work over and over, no matter what. And that endurance is often, it's just not given the amount of credit that it deserves. There's nothing sexy about endurance. There's nothing sexy about doing the same mundane task over and over. People want the big things to celebrate, the big moves that they make, but it's the discipline that shows someone's ability to truly see something out to the end. And it's just like the classic rabbit and the turtle race, right? The rabbit is over here, he's got the speed, he can race all the way to the end, but he gets too lax about it and he chills halfway through. And the turtle, slowly but surely, continues 1 foot in front of the other, 1 foot in front of the other. By the end of the race, he realizes the rabbit over there is messing around, that the turtle has crossed the finish line. And he won because he never stopped moving forward. And the other guy was just, he took it so lightly. He didn't take it seriously. And that's what I see when it comes to you, because maybe you're not the fastest to the finish line, right? But you are the most consistent, and you get better every single day. And to me, that is the most important characteristic that any man can have. And it doesn't just reflect on your own story, it reflects on how you show up for me. And how I know I can trust you with a family, how I know I can trust you in anything that you put your mind to, because endurance is truly key, and it shows to me that you are capable of much higher heights than someone who just wants to sprint race to the finish line.
What do you believe the lack of discipline in a man does to his relationship, or to a woman specifically? Speaking from a woman's perspective, she watches her man talk about eating cleaner but never really doing it, and talking about getting back in the gym, or doing it but he only works out a couple of times a week and he's all over the place with it. He's talking about that business idea or trying to get this promotion from his boss or whatever, like just talking all the time but not actually following through this and not truly being a man of his word. What type of parallels do women draw that create some instability in their commitment in the relationship?
Well, it's falling in love with potential and false hope. I feel, and this is something that we get warned about all the time as little girls, don't fall in love with potential, fall in love with the actual man. And over time, if you just hear him talk about all the things he wants to do but never does it, that'll reflect on how, just even household chores, it'll reflect on how he shows up for his kids, for us, for the relationship. There's no trust there. If I can't trust you to show up for you, you're definitely not going to show up for me, because you're going to be number one at all times, and I expect it to be that way. And so if you're not taking care of your body, if you're not if there's no drive there for yourself, there is no drive to care for anything outside of that.
Now, what would you say for the man that is a huge people pleaser and will do everything for you, but fails to do it for himself? Does that change it at all, or do you think that it still has the same effect and result in the end?
Yeah, it does. It does change it. To me, that doesn't say leader. That says follower. And I don't want to follow a follower. If that's the case, I'm doing fine on my own. Trust me, I do not need to be following somebody who is weak in some sense.
Or you leading the relationship.
I don't want to lead the relationship, right? That would end up being the case if that's what I saw all the time. I would naturally, maybe even subconsciously, begin to lead the relationship, and I would feel stressed. I would wonder why I'm stressed, and then there will be a moment in time that I would pause and be like, oh my God, it's because I'm leading this, and I'm tired. I'm tired of leading this. And yeah, if he's a people pleaser, if he doesn't stand
a yes man.
A yes man. What is the saying? If you don't stand for anything, you fall for everything. And that is so very true. If you don't know what your beliefs are, your morals, you're not firm in who you are, you're easily swayed. So what does that say about me trusting you even with other women? Can another woman easily persuade you? Can your friends cause you to act out of character because they're putting a little bit of pressure on you? Maybe you hang out with a bunch of single guys and you go out a single night, and all of a sudden they're like, yeah, come on, dude, like, you just touch your butt a little, like one little butt tap. Touch your butt. Would you give into that pressure?
Right.
Probably. I mean, that's a parallel I would draw, because he's weak in his stance on everything else. There's no saying what he would do,
Yeah.
Whereas, like, with you, you're so, like, almost aggressively firm when in your beliefs, that when you believe something, you shut it down quick. And that, to me, says I can trust you. That, to me, says you're going to show up like that in every area of your business. And the fact that everybody else that I know knows that about you, I mean, done.
Yeah. So I think that's something in itself. That's a brand that I've built.
Yeah.
And not to make this about me, but as far as, okay, if you're known for that, like, even the people that live in our building,
yeah,
they don't know me, but they know what I stand for, because they see me in the conference room for 12, 14 hours a day, in the cold plunge at 4 a.m., in the gym every day, all these things. And then they're always like, buddy, giving me that respect because of those things.
Because it demands respect. The fact that you're showing up like that every single day, I mean, most people
I'd
cannot
say that
do
it
that.
commands respect, not demands.
It commands respect, yeah. I mean, you can't help but respect somebody who is showing up every day in the mundane, pursuing the grind.
And so I point that out because I think that if most men just focused on that and not what it's going to get them, it would actually give them everything.
Yeah, I think people, both men and women, we just get so focused on these big gestures, these big moments in life. Again, that's not where success lies. It's the little things we do every single day. And if you could just focus on one thing in front of the other over and over, you're going to become an expert at it.
I love it. You've said this several times, that the world needs more men like me, and I've struggled to receive it a little bit, but that's because honestly, I think it's probably the best compliment you could possibly receive from your wife. But I'd love for you to explain what you mean by it, because inherently that means that men are failing to act a specific way, and you believe I'm acting in a way that is leading by example. And I could easily assume what that is because of what I teach and that I practice what I preach, but I'd love to hear from you in detail what that means for men so that they understand, and even for me to understand truly why you say that, because then it also affirms the way, like, I can keep staying on this path, and then other men can step into that path if they want the same things that I have been able to build for my life by acting and operating in that way.
Yeah. I say it because I feel like a lot of men get it wrong. They think that being so flashy and it's all about the money, and they build so much of this image outside without worrying about the inside and their internal posture. And they fail in that aspect, where a lot of the times most women really want a man who is emotionally intelligent, who is secured in himself, and who can provide that safety for women. And so when I say the world needs more men like you, it's because it truly does. Like our world, I look at the men today and I hear the horrible dating stories. I mean, I was in it before you and had gone on several dates, have tried to meet with men, but many of them were indecisive, weren't assertive, didn't know how to ask me out on a date. Their first response was, well, what do you want to do? I'm like, bro, figure it out. Like, you want to take me on a date, figure it out. So the indecisiveness, and then when it came to communicating, they didn't know how to communicate what they actually wanted. It was full of, what are you doing in the middle of the night? I'm like, no. And I shouldn't have to be the one to tell you how to show up like a man. And I felt that was happening a lot during my dating experience. And it's just crazy what is actually going on in the dating world. Men are wanting to be the prize. They're wanting to be the princess in the relationship. They want to be pursued. One of my exes was angry with me because he said I wasn't romantic enough. Dude, I'm not the man. And although I love taking you out, I like to take you on a date even though you don't expect it. But there's this level of princess in our men today, which is crazy, which I understand it, right? Because if you look at how most men have grown up nowadays, it's single mothers trying to teach men how to be men. But the only way a man can learn how to be a man is by learning from another man who is worthy of learning from.
Well, that's the thing is we have a couple of generations of soft men.
Yes.
That have also been raising soft men.
Yeah, and I get it. There's cultural things involved. We can go down the rabbit hole of why that is, but the fact of the matter is there are men who don't know how to show up as men. And we can't teach you that. Like, we can't. And yeah, I say that because you show up, and although you're not perfect, you own it. You own the insecurities. You own your truth. You own when things don't go your way. You don't let it kick you to the ground. You don't stay there. You're stable. You're assertive. Your integrity speaks for itself. I mean, you care about how others perceive you in a sense that you wouldn't want to let people down. Like, your heart is so big as well. And so and to even top that off, it's not just that stuff. You also know how to communicate and how to soften when it comes to certain conversations. You know how to manage me or handle me when I'm just emotional. You don't try to correct me. You're not so abrasive, but you can be if you need to be. So you're a mixture of both. And I think that's a beautiful contrast that I would love to see in men more, who own up to their emotions, who know how to communicate effectively, but still are firm in their beliefs, are not people pleasers, who show up daily, who can do the hard stuff that we don't want to do. That's the whole point of, at least for me, having a man to do the things I don't want to do. Yeah. There's a lot of things I don't want to do.
A lot of things I don't want to do too that I will gladly allow you to.
And that's the beauty of it. The beauty of this dynamic is there's some things that I can do that you don't want to do, and vice versa. So yeah, I say that I would love to see, and this is why I want to have children with you, and I can't wait to have babies with you, and love to have little boys, because we truly need more men being men.
I appreciate that. It's interesting because you saying the whole thing of like, I can't teach you how to be a man, or as women we shouldn't have to teach you how to be a man. The ironic thing about that is that most of the women who say that are super masculine and actually need to learn or relearn how to be a woman.
True.
And then the argument against that I immediately know comes is, well, we're here because of not the ability to, or we're here because we haven't been able to depend on men to show up like men. And I agree with that.
It's nice.
But yeah, it's interesting and cool. Like, I shouldn't have to teach you how to be a woman either. But at the same time, if to expect a woman to step into her feminine, you first have to lead the way. You can't expect her to get to her feminine just so you can be masculine.
Yeah.
You have to step into your masculine, and from a strong, healthy, confident place, which requires the discipline, which requires the integrity, the accountability, the taking responsibility.
Yeah.
And if you can do those things, just those things as a foundation, again, and this is where I think the peace that we have in our relationship heavily comes from, because if I didn't show up that way, you wouldn't feel safe and secure, seen, or any of the things that you feel now in order to offer me that peace.
100%.
To not be a pain in the ass when I walk in the door, right? Or like to be pushing me in, you know, questioning my decisions and things of that nature.
I wanted to touch on that because it truly is, as much as and you know me, and you're getting to know me here, but there truly is a difference in you cannot be, as much as I love to take responsibility for my own actions, my own growth, the feminine is very vulnerable. It is a vulnerable space to be in. And it's not protected, then it is easily weakened. It can easily be attacked and easily be taken advantage of. And so I'm sharing this because when it comes to the feminine truly coming out, it really does require a safe place for us to play and flourish in. If we don't feel safe to do, I mean, think about it. If a woman doesn't feel safe in a space, she's not gonna be a woman. She's gonna have her defenses up. She's gonna be ready to fight because there's so many attackers, there's so many places that leave us vulnerable. Like even out in public, we will not have our defenses down. We're scared, right? But when we feel safe, that's when we can truly play. I always think of this, I have this image in my mind of a bunch of women playing out like I don't want to even get into it because then I'll go too far into it. But
we got a few more minutes.
Yeah.
Just gotta.
Yeah, I saw. But
well, and I think that what you're talking about, that safety, is what leads to the level of intimacy that we're able to have and the deep connection that we're able to maintain and sustain over a long period of time.
Yeah, and even the desire to be more of a wife shows up when I feel safe enough that you deserve it. It sounds weird to say, oh, until you deserve it, but it's true. We've given ourselves away and learned from our past experiences. That doesn't serve us when we give our all to a relationship and a man who is unstable. And so we have to learn when to reserve and preserve ourselves. And until you prove to us that you're a man who's worthy of our femininity, us being a wife, we're not going to want to show up in that way. So you take the first step. As much as, you can point the other finger and say women need to take the first step, but that's not how it works.
That's not leading.
No,
that's
not leading.
That would be them leading.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah, I think I've been reflecting recently because, you consistently texting me in the morning wanting to, interrupt my flow to, get into some deeper work. And then, surprising me with breakfast and doing all these things. It's okay. Whatever I've been doing, I just need to keep doing, because those are the moments where you really step heavily into a, just feminine flow and want to do that. So we only have a couple minutes left here. So I want to make I want to try to ask these last couple questions, but keep them punchy. If you go back in time and give the 2021 version of yourself advice before stepping into this relationship, what would you say?
Say it one more time.
If you could go back in time and give the 2021 version of yourself advice before stepping into this relationship, what would that advice be?
I don't like these questions because I feel like everything played out exactly the way that it needed to.
Okay.
There's paths, and I needed to learn the lessons I needed to learn at the exact time that I learned them. So I don't like those questions because I don't have any advice. I'm figuring it out.
Well, and it worked out.
And it worked out.
Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Last question then is, what's your biggest piece of advice for men who want the kind of relationship that we have now, but aren't there yet, whether they're single or they're really in a relationship right now and having a lot of challenges?
I would say it would be to build the habits and behaviors to build yourself up as a man. And that means doing it, but do it for yourself. Don't do it to please anyone else. Don't do it to please her. Do it for yourself, because even though many people will see this as a very selfish response, it's truly not, because the only way you're going to receive the love and compassion and everything from anyone else, you have to be able to do that for yourself first. And when you love yourself, when you show up for yourself, when you have integrity with yourself, and you build your own trust with you, that you can show up for you, you will begin to build that confidence to be able to show up for any other relationship in your life. And so it starts with you. You take the first step of loving you. You take the first step of showing what leadership looks like in your relationship, and she will happily give that back. But somebody has to take the first step, and what an honor it is that you get to say you made that first move, that you moved it forward, right? I think there's a lot of people who want to just take this soft route and blame everyone else, and they don't see it as an honor to be leading in that space. But a true man would be happy to say, I'm the one who led this, and I pushed even though I couldn't see the full scope of things. It's an honor to be a leader. And for women, when we know that we are with a great leader, it's an honor to follow.
Definitely couldn't have said it better myself. Sounds like you have a really smart husband.
I do.
Is there, just last remarks here, is there anything that we haven't covered that you think was a key to our success in our relationship and what we're experiencing right now that is worth addressing?
Sex. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding.
Very good sex.
Very good sex.
We've covered a lot. So.
No, I feel like I feel like we covered most of it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, ladies and gentlemen, there you have it. I know that the majority of this conversation has been a little bit more focused on me and her perspective on me and our relationship, and more so men. And that the intention is to be able to showcase the response and her perspective on this, like really how we got here, and again, getting a deeper understanding of what I've done right and what I messed up and had to figure out how to do right. And there's probably a lot more that we didn't actually cover of mess ups that I did, more so around listening and communication and things that correcting and interrupting and things that we didn't dive into too much that I really had to learn. But those are the finer skills that don't really matter unless you have the discipline, the integrity, the accountability, the ability to take responsibility, and the commitment to the work. But we would not be here without you and your strength and your resilience and your commitment to the work. You didn't hire a coach. You just journaled for hours and hours every morning and did all sorts of wild stuff to just figure it out. And I love you and I appreciate you, and I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to marry you, and I really appreciate you sitting down and just keeping it very real, so that way people could see that I practice what I preach, but I'm also not perfect. I love you.
I love you.
All right, we're getting kicked out of here.